Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything, and welcome back to another Road to Yu-Gi-Oh! 7 video. I know the last Road to Yu-Gi-Oh! 7 video I did, which was about twin protagonists, I believe that was uploaded on Monday. I said that would probably be the final video of that series, but honestly, I've been sitting here now for a couple days. We are literally 2 days away from the Yu-Gi-Oh! 7 announcement at Jump Festa, and I was like, you know what, why not make just a quick fun discussion video in regards to my opinions on whether we could see a sequel to one of the 6 Yu-Gi-Oh! Animes we've already gotten, whether we might see a reboot, whether I would like the idea of a reboot, maybe a Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters manga adaptation. I'm going to go over all of that with you in this video, and of course I do want to hear from you guys as well. So I'm going to talk about the original Yu-Gi-Oh! First, since if there's going to be a reboot, it's probably going to be the original show. If there's going to be an adaptation of the manga, even though every single Yu-Gi-Oh! Besides Vrains does have its own unique manga story, they're probably going to go with the original show. The original story, it would just make the most sense. And then, of course, if they're going to do a sequel, the other shows might be a little more in play for that. And after I give my thoughts on whether I think the new Yu-Gi-Oh! Might be a Duel Monsters reboot or a Duel Monsters manga adaptation, a true to manga adaptation, unlike the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters anime was, I'm going to play a little game where I'm going to swipe right or swipe left on every single Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime that we have had in terms of whether I think it could get a sequel and whether I think it would be a good sequel and whether I would like to see a sequel. Now, I've never thrown my hat into the world of Tinder, into the world of dating apps, where obviously you swipe right if you like someone, you swipe left if you don't. So this will be kind of me making up for that void, even though it's not really a void. And of course, there's nothing wrong with using dating apps. I know a lot of people that have had successful relationships through them. I also know a lot of horror stories that have come through them. If you're going to use dating apps, just remember to always be careful. But anyway, that's kind of the game that we're going to be playing a little later on in this video, where I will be swiping right or left on all 6 Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows in terms of whether I think it could get a sequel and whether I'd want to see that sequel. So before we get into that, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters Reboot. This has been discussed by many people. It's something that I said I would really not like to see. I'm going to kind of walk that back a little bit. I don't think I would fully mind if it was a Duel Monsters reboot. For those that don't know, this is what a reboot is, by the way. The term signifies a new start to an established fictional universe, work, or series that discards continuity to recreate its characters, plot lines, and backstory from the beginning. So basically, if on Friday, if in 2 days, Konami comes out and says it's a Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters reboot, it's an original Yu-Gi-Oh! Reboot, that means everything that we know about Yugi Muto, about Domino City, about Joey Wheeler, throw it all away. Throw it all away. This reboot, Seto Kaiba could be the main protagonist and he could be a good guy. The backstories could be completely different. The first episode could be Yugi Muto versus a very competent duelist, Taya Gardner, where Taya Gardner XZ summons and Yugi Muto synchro summons. Okay, so that's what a reboot does. It throws away everything we already know, and honestly, it could recreate its characters even. So it might not even be the same characters from the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Of course, if they're going to do that, then why not just make it a brand new show? So I don't really see them doing something along those lines. I think it would be interesting. I wouldn't necessarily love it. I think, you know, when I think of Yugi Muto, I think of Joey Wheeler, Seto Kaiba. I already think of certain character traits. I think of certain character arcs. I think having a brand new show that just kind of reestablishes these characters isn't really necessary. It seems unnecessary to me, and if you're going to do that, why not just make a brand new show entirely, especially with the at least 6-month break that you've been on. It would seem just a little cheap to do that, personally. So I wouldn't love it. The one thing that I really would not like, though, is if they remade the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga into an anime. Here's the thing, I love the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga. I think if Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters followed the manga, panel for panel, page for page, it would probably be my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Of all 6, the anime. I love the manga. The anime added filler arcs that I didn't necessarily love, but besides the very beginnings of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga, you know, before Seto Kaiba and the Yugi Exodia duel, which we kind of have a little bit in Season 0, which Toei animated in the 90s, I feel like it wouldn't really add much. I feel like it would be very similar, The truth is, besides the filler arc, the anime is pretty close to the manga. And I know there are some differences, especially in Egypt, and, trust me, I've read the manga, I think, twice over now. So there are definitely some noticeable differences, but are the differences enough where you would say, wow, that was worth it? Especially because there's a 6-month break. If you're going to go back and you're going to make an anime that follows the manga, you shouldn't need a break like that, because you don't need to create new character designs. You don't need to create new monster designs. You can't create new cards, and that's the big thing. Doing a show like this does not create new cards, because you have to follow the manga unless you're going to add the newer summoning methods in the manga storyline for the original Yu-Gi-Oh!, which wouldn't really be a manga adaptation at all. So, for those reasons, I just think it's too convoluted. I think it's a little unnecessary, and it's not something that I necessarily would like to see. But now we're going to get into the Tinder part of this game, where I'm going to go Yu-Gi-Oh! By Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm going to swipe right if I love it, swipe left if I don't love it, in terms of whether I want to see a sequel. And the first one on the table is Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. So the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Is interesting because you could also do a sequel to Dark Side of Dimensions, which, remember, Dark Side of Dimensions is a sequel to the manga, not a sequel to the anime. When I think of the original Yu-Gi-Oh!, I think if they did a sequel, this would be the most likely setting that they would do it in. Kind of tricky because the continuity they've established is GX happens 10 years after Duel Monsters, 5Ds happens probably 20, 25 years after Duel Monsters. Actually, I think GX only happens 3. I don't think the gap is 10 years. My memory is a little fuzzy there. I gotta re-jog it for the timeline theory I'm working on. So doing a Duel Monsters sequel would be cool, but it would be kind of difficult to incorporate new cards. It would be almost impossible to explain why Xyz summonings are appearing, why Pendulum summonings are appearing. And as someone who really wants all of the summoning methods to show up, I'm actually going to swipe left on a Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters sequel. Wouldn't really love it, and I don't think it's all that plausible. Going into Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, GX ended pretty interestingly. Judai is going on a new adventure, which we kind of get some closure on in Bonds Beyond Time. All of the students graduate. They're going on their own paths. I believe Asuka wants to become a teacher. Manjome is going to try out for the Pro League. GX had a very solid and not that ambiguous ending, especially because Bonds Beyond Time kind of told us what Judai had been up to, or at least that he was okay on his adventure. So I'm going to swipe left on it. It's the same issue with Duel Monsters, where I don't think it would work that well, because how do you incorporate the newer methods? How do you incorporate a brand new method, especially with how the board is? If the board doesn't change from Master Rule 5, I can't really see it happening. Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. Oh man, I would personally love to see Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds have a sequel. We don't know what happened to Yusei Fudo. Unlike Bonds Beyond Time, it didn't give us any closure on what Yusei was doing in the future. Jack Atlas, it would be great to see him finally duel against Crow. It would be great to see Aki as a doctor having to duel somehow. But I don't think that it's all that plausible. I think they're going to leave the original trilogy alone. And as much as I would love to see a 5D sequel, the logistics of it, I'm going to swipe left. I think it actually ended really well because of its ambiguousness. And I'm going to swipe left on a 5D sequel. Now we have Yu-Gi-Oh! Zale, Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. And this basically starts the new franchise almost, the new trilogy. I'm breaking the Yu-Gi-Ohs down into trilogies very similar to how they do with Star Wars. You have the original trilogy, which is 1, 2, and 3, although with Star Wars it's 4, 5, and 6, probably a bad example. And then the newer trilogy is Zexal, Arc 5, and Vrains. Zexal, I'm going to swipe right on. I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal ended really well to set up an easy sequel with a threat at Astroworld, and because there doesn't really seem to be a timeline establishment like the original trilogy had, I don't think it would be hard to add pendulums in. I don't think it would be hard to add links in, and whatever new summoning method they want. All they have to say is it's a 5-year time skip. You could have an older Yuma as the protagonist. You could have anyone else as a protagonist. You could have a brand new protagonist that just takes place in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal world 5 years later, and pendulums are there, links are there, whatever the new method is there. I think it would be very easy to explain, and so I'm going to swipe right. I think that's actually a pretty genuine sequel that could work with everything that Yu-Gi-Oh! Always wants to do in terms of using a new mechanic and showing off new cards. Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 is very similar with Zexal, where it wouldn't be hard, I don't think, to add links, and they did all the summoning methods really well. The way Arc 5 ended, though, is we were about to have Yuya versus Yugioh. It seemed that every single conflict was solved. Every single conflict. You have Shun smiling at his dead sister and best friend, and that basically sums up the ending of Arc 5. I'm going to swipe left on Arc 5. I don't think that there's really enough to make it a seamless transition into a sequel, and based on what happened with Arc 5, well, I think a lot of it is overblown. I think they would be taking a massive risk and isolating a lot of people if they went the route of saying, yeah, we're going to do a sequel to Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. I wouldn't mind if they reboot Arc 5, by the way. If they were going to reboot a show, reboot Arc 5. I really would not mind that at all, to see them go at it a second time, because I think if they learn from the mistakes that Arc 5 made, especially those last 20 episodes, I think Arc 5 could have a very solid conclusion and be one of the best Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows. Going into Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains is obviously the show that ended early. It's the show that probably has the most talk of getting a sequel, of this next Yu-Gi-Oh! 7 being in the Vrains universe. I gotta swipe right on Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. I truly believe that a sequel to Vrains is probably the easiest sequel that this franchise could make, especially with how ambiguously it ended. Yusaku, 3 months with no contact, searching frantically for Ai who is seemingly alive. I mean, the way it ended was probably more open-ended than the way 5Ds ended, and because you could just say, this is a couple years after Vrains ended, this is the new summoning that's been created, here we are, here we go. I think it's very easy to do, and so I would swipe right on a Vrains sequel. So my swipe rights are Zexal and Vrains just because of the way they ended and the way that the timeline works. I think it's very easy to incorporate every single summoning mechanic, including a new one. 5Ds I would have loved to swipe right on, but logistically, because of where it is on the timeline, I don't think that they would really do it. And even though we don't see what happened to Yusei, I think most things wrapped up pretty solidly there. But yeah, 5Ds was the one that I was kind of in the middle on. I didn't really want to swipe left, and I didn't really want to swipe right. I just have an issue imagining a Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds show 2 or 3 years later using XZs, links, pendulums. But I guess they can really do whatever they want. It's not really like they care too much about the timeline. But yeah, those are my thoughts on whether I think Yu-Gi-Oh! 7 can be a sequel of one of the original 6 shows. And of course, whether I think that Yu-Gi-Oh! 7 could be something to do with Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. Really wouldn't love to see that, but I guess we're just going to have to wait to see. 2 more days, guys, until Jump Festa. I cannot wait. A special thank you to my Platinum tier patrons Alexa Baker, Glen McGookin, Jorge Carrillo, James Rose, Horace Maye, Goosey Q, Vincent Van Der Veen, Panther J, Smith620, Jorge Leon, and Blue Maiden 28, and to my Diamond tier patrons Jesse Wood, Latrell Smith, Sean, and Melinda Phantom, and to my Egyptian God tier patrons Joss Rivers and Syn Cloud. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart to everyone who supports me on Patreon and to everyone who is a YouTube channel member. Your support means the world. I will talk to all of you guys down below. Let me know your final thoughts headed in to the Yu-Gi-Oh! 7 announcement. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day.